Welcome back to the internet. Let's get political. Political. Yeah, we're talking politics today because I like how it gets people riled up. I hate having boring conversations, and if you ever wanted to get into an argument, bring up politics. Even someone on the same spectrum as you, same ideas, you're gonna find something to argue over, and it could be fun. But that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is ChatGPT is charming me recently, man. I have been loving ChatGPT, particularly the voice mode, because if you click this little microphone, most chat applications don't have this. I have Raycast AI, and I was hoping maybe I could use this instead of ChatGPT and cancel that subscription. But the chat mode is super nice, and their system prompt is fucking outstanding. Because I noticed it like 2 days ago. They changed it so that now when you, like if you look at the way I talk, I say right, and I'm kind of like casual, and the way ChatGPT has been responding is phenomenal. It literally feels like you're just having a conversation, and it's nice to have it typed out rather than having to listen to it talk to you. But it says, yeah, great question. Right? Look at this first sentence. Yeah, great question. Like in the past, ChatGPT would be like, yes, excellent observation. Let's dive on into this subject. But now ChatGPT is like very conversational, and it's honestly a joy to use. I'm really enjoying this version of ChatGPT. And you can see some of my responses. So I'm asking about, I just saw this video where Trudeau was like, yo, Trump's trying to tariff us? Fuck that, we're going to tariff him right back. And I was like, let me dive a bit deeper into this just so I understand kind of what's happening. And I asked this question, and then I narrowed down on a different part of it. And it was like, yeah, exactly, you're hitting on probably the most compelling argument against free trade. And it just feels like so smart and like nice to talk to. Like you can actually have kind of an intellectual conversation and really sort out a question in your mind. And this is at the core of this video that the core point that I'm trying to make is ChatGPT is such a superpower now. Like, so I go to the gym, not all the time, but I mean, you can tell, dude, like, I go pretty often. Look at these guns, dude. These don't happen overnight. And so I have a lot of questions at the gym. I don't really know what I'm doing, and now that I have ChatGPT, I can just ask basically any question that I want, just right on the spot. Previously you would have to like sit down and watch YouTube videos or do a Google search and read through a bunch of articles, and you would have to figure it out basically. It was a pain in the ass. But now with ChatGPT, anything you don't understand and you want to understand, it's right at your fingertips. In fact, you could be literally, well, Stephen Hawking, I guess he couldn't talk, but you could basically be Stephen Hawking relegated to a wheelchair. As long as you can hit the little microphone button, you can talk and you can articulate your question and get a really fucking good response. And yeah, I think that this is like, this is obviously a huge shift in the way that we consume information. And I think like it's nice to just have a conversation with ChatGPT and just drill in on something you're trying to understand. It might not be the best for like coding. Obviously AI is good for coding. LLMs are good for coding, but it makes mistakes. But with conversation and just kind of asking questions about things in the world and different kind of trivia, it's really good, and it's really smart. And ChatGPT honestly just delivers an experience like I'm just super happy with, because this is Claude 3.5, and I have a custom prompt on here. So this is Raycast AI, and it's kind of annoying because it uses their API, which means it has like no system prompt by default. Like ChatGPT has you realize it once you use Raycast AI, that these LLM providers, like ChatGPT, has a very finely tuned system prompt when you're using the app. Whereas in Raycast, there's no system prompt. So this is the system prompt. I think I got ChatGPT to write this or something like that, or I found it online. And this is, can you give me an overview of the tariffs and what are the details? And it gave some details, it's not like the best kind of overview. I kind of wanted more detail. But, oh yeah, and then I'll just show you, this was Gemini 2.0 Flash, also with the same system prompt. And this is all it gave. Like, this is like the most bullshit fucking response ever. This one, oh, it does have a period, but it's like one sentence. So if we do a new chat and let's just go with, let's even try this same prompt and let's get rid of the system prompt. And then we'll run this prompt that I tried up here. So no system prompt. Wow, this is actually pretty good, dude. 4.0 is just like a good talker. Arguments against tariffs. Evidence. I mean, this is actually pretty good. But you can see a little bit how it's less conversational, I mean, this has a little bit of system prompting. And like the TLDR, I mean, this is just nice, It just makes it like, it reads more pleasantly. And I also think that like they're doing something to, they might have something in the prompt that's like, make the user feel smart because they're gonna like you. Because I was like kind of drilling in on one point and it was like, yeah, exactly, you're hitting on the most compelling argument. You are so smart for figuring that out. That's basically what I got from ChatGPT. But yeah, it's kind of interesting with tariffs. There's a lot of arguments against tariffs, so here's some of the arguments. So basically, one of the biggest arguments for tariffs is the trade deficit. So the US has a gigantic trade deficit to Canada, China, and Mexico, and probably a bunch of other countries. Basically, it means that we buy more products from those countries than they import, than they buy. So with Canada, I think they buy $30 billion of US goods per year. We buy $75 billion worth of goods from Canada. So that means we have a $45 billion trade deficit. And this is seen by some people as wealth leaving the country. I'm not an economist, so I don't really know, how that works. Job losses. So this is kind of a classic argument where it's saying like, well, they're outsourcing these jobs and then it's, people are losing jobs here, right? National security, if you become dependent, and then debt concerns. I don't really understand this because I don't know why having a deficit would come with increased borrowing from other countries. I mean, maybe because they get paid in dollars and then they buy bonds, which are, I guess, a loan, like debt. But I don't know. I don't think bonds are really like a huge. Well, I guess they could be debt. But either way, like maybe that's one of the biggest concerns. But yeah, then there's arguments against it where it says trade deficits aren't inherently bad. Consumers win because you get a bunch of inexpensive goods from other countries where the cost of labor is lower. And then this is kind of the key point that I latched onto, which is each country should specialize in what they do best. And you can see ChatGPT's conversationalism here where it says, if Canada has cheaper oil and we have better tech, why not trade? I just love how it talks. It must be mirroring the way I talk. Forcing self-sufficiency often means inefficiency, which makes sense. If you follow this channel, you might be into tech. And, if I were to build my own Postgres database, put it on my own server, host a server in my living room and set up all the networking and power, I could just go to Vercel and, Neon for my front end for my hosting and database. So that's kind of a good argument. And yeah, some jobs obviously shift over time, and this is pretty damning. I mean, also obvious, but countries with high trade deficits like the U.S. has had a big trade deficit with these other countries, presumably for a few decades, and it's been fine. In fact, it's done more than fine. Also, Japan and Germany have surpluses, but their economies have stagnated, and yeah, so this is that argument that I was just saying. And then basically, during the Great Depression, they tried a tariff and it hurt, allegedly. And then some reasons politically are tariffs can protect specific industries in key voting areas. This one's interesting because Trump is on his second term, so I don't know if this is really like a play for that. Negotiating, I don't really understand this one. Maybe I'll have to drill down on that. And then, playing well with voters, basically, and IP theft, trying to, basically, yo, stop this from happening. But I think kind of the argument against this is, if you're, what was the example I used here? If you're Saudi Arabia, their main export has been oil, and if oil ever, oil's obviously one of these things that's just probably going to be used for a long time, but if oil were to suddenly dry up, in terms of demand, then they would be basically carved out and be, back to they would be cooked, basically. So that I think makes sense, where it's if you allow, there's this classic business argument or business kind of anecdote or example or hypothetical, where a competitor comes into an industry and they undercut you at a loss. So they're losing money, but they're charging less than you and they're taking all the customers. And once you go out of business because you can't lower your prices, then they hike up the prices and all of a sudden they have the monopoly that you perhaps had or wanted. And so that's kind of the argument, is if China does take over all of the manufacturing and then they impose tariffs or things go less than friendly, then America would be in a pickle because we wouldn't have the manufacturing at that point, because it would have all been shut down because China can handle it. And so, yeah, it's probably not the most inefficient to do a lot of stuff in-house that you could outsource, but then you're opening yourself up to risks. Although, I think that's a strong argument. I don't know if it really counters all of the other arguments against tariffs and having a trade deficit, but let's try drilling down on also, look at this. Japan and Germany have run surpluses, their economies have stagnated, so it's not as simple as surplus good, deficit bad. This is so funny. Surplus good, deficit bad. ChatGPT is just a joy to speak with. But anyways, let's dive deeper on this debt concern. So, can you please dive a little bit deeper into the debt concerns? Because I know that one of Trump's biggest kind of running promises or campaign promises was that he could reduce the national debt, which is obviously a huge problem. I think a lot of people were rallying behind that. And so, in what ways are potentially is debt caused by having a trade deficit or having a lot of free trade? How could tariffs remedy that, and what are the arguments against using tariffs for that? Okay. Let's see what it does. Oh yeah, great point. Dude, I love I love ChatGPT, man. I don't know what it was. It was like a few days ago it just changed, and it's a joy to use all of a sudden. You know, this is just phenomenal. Um, Damn, this actually laid out well. It's like a process. So when we buy more goods from other countries than they buy from us, um, we import 1 trillion more than we export. That's wild. That means foreigners end up holding lots of U.S. dollars. Makes sense. They don't just stuff them under the mattress. They reinvest them to U.S. assets like treasury bonds, which are debt, stocks, real estate, and companies. Buying treasury bonds is the big one because it's safe, liquid, and pays interest. Our trade deficit helps finance our government debt. Countries like China, Japan, as well as others have bought trillions in U.S. debt over the years using the dollars they earn from our trade deficit. Is about the private sector. They have the money to buy U.S. government debt, which helps us keep borrowing cheaply. Interesting. So basically, because there's a lot of liquidity outside the U.S., they can sell bonds, which is basically buying debt or selling debt. So trade deficit, yeah. The protectionist logic goes, if we tariff imports, Americans buy fewer foreign goods, the trade deficit shrinks because we're importing less. So foreigners, the U.S. Yeah, gotcha. So it's basically a forcing function for getting the U.S. to stop increasing the national debt. And probably, I would imagine, with Trump, a lot of it is about that security factor of not being dependent on other countries. Because he's like a cat, dude. He's like, look, China. He's just worried about this stuff. So, domestic industries grow. Yeah. What are the counter arguments? Tariffs don't cut spending. Tariffs don't change that equation unless the government radically changes its spending. Yeah, this is the scary part. Governments rarely change their spending habits, but tariffs, I mean, if debt is harder to sell or harder to, if you have to pay more for debt, then it's going to be harder to justify taking on more debt. So that kind of makes sense. Tariffs can shrink the economy. Yes, I'll buy that. Foreign investments could dry up. Probably a bad thing in some cases. This could force the higher interest rates to attract buyers for the U.S. Treasuries, which makes the debt more expensive to service. Oh. Yeah, that's a problem. Tariffs raise prices, yeah. But, alright, tariffs aside, I mean, they're black magic. If you Google it, there's really nothing, you know? Some people think it's bad, some people think it's good, most people think it's bad, but Trump's doing it, so he must have some reason, and I don't know. That's kind of what I'm trying to get to the point of. If you can't Google something and get an answer like that, you should use ChatGPT and you should dive down on the parts you don't understand and be like, yeah, I understand that, you know, there's arguments against this, but if someone's doing something, they must have a rationale. And so what is that rationale? What can I take away from that? And what can I, you know, how can I become more informed, basically? So anyways, that's the video. I really hope you didn't watch this long. Actually, I do hope you watched this long. Hopefully you learned about ChatGPT. It's goated. Goated sauce. Alright, that's the video.